Next up is Jerry Prete. We got to know Jerry with the research project that Joe leads on Rural Tim, and he provided some great insight for things that we don't often think about. He became an early star in that national team that we put together for the Rural Tim perspective, so that we could share with the rest of the nation. So we appreciate Jerry, and he's got a lot to share and some new cool things they're actually doing in Montana. So with that, I'll be quiet and pass it along to you, Jerry.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Disregard the large mastiff in the background. The postman must have just come by, so he might bark a little bit as we go. I've been involved in the fire service for 32 years. Got involved in TIM actually through VFIS years and years ago, and it just kind of morphed from there. Would we deal with what's going on in here? We were one of the pilot programs for the new 4-hour TIM program, and again, brought around due to a tragedy. MHP was the one that actually ran the program through 2020. Our champion was Alex Betts, who unfortunately got cancer and passed away. And as a result of that, the Highway Patrol really had no one that wanted to champion it anymore. And I just couldn't let the program die. So I asked my boss if we could take it over, and we did, and we started looking at some things as we went through. Here in Montana, easily over 80% of the time, traffic control is handled by fire. And amazingly enough, in rural Montana, fire will do traffic control for even a tow recovery, because we have resources and we have like one trooper for 4 counties. The county I work out of is 3,800 square miles with 70 miles wide by 50 miles long. So there's a lot of paved roads and unpaved roads. And we have a trooper that covers 4 of those, and a deputy on duty at each county. So they just don't have the capability. So we worked with the fire service part of it first when we started looking at how do we change it and how do we make it better. It wasn't so much change it, but better. And what that resulted from is my job as a regional trainer. I put about 75,000 miles a year on just in my work truck. I have front and rear dash cams. I drive through a fair amount of incidents. And I was going through areas where we had presented the program, and we weren't seeing them implementing the program as we presented it through the program, through the PowerPoint. And it just got us looking and doing at things. And so in the fire school, we concentrate on the do, things that we want you to have when we have a process. I love Ohio's video program. We're getting ready to shoot our own training video on the 2-lane and then 4-lane. We've been a little delayed due to a lengthy training season, and then we just are coming out of a drought, which resulted in massive flooding. We are now dealing with flooding up in northwestern Montana, where infrastructure is being wiped out at an ungodly basis. So it's kind of delayed our setup a little bit. And one of the things we know is everybody that's involved in TIM, they're a doer. They don't sit behind a desk, with the exception of our dispatchers. They go out there and do things. And we know through, we're fortunate that we have a doctorate, a PhD guy that does all about human learning and human psyche, actually teaches internationally, Dr. Brian Crandall. And so we learn a lot about how humans learn, especially adult learners. And so the video portion is really important to show them what does right look like. We know that if we allow someone to do something wrong for the very first time, it can take as many as 30 additional repetitions to get it right because of that first imprint. And I guess I can relate that to your first impression. When you first meet somebody, that first impression stays with you, and it takes a long time to change somebody's first impression of you. So that's the thing we know. So we want to show them what right looks like, and then we do what we call sequencing. We make you walk through it. You're not actually touching the fire gear. You're not doing anything else. We're just looking at the video. These are the processes. These are the steps. Let's walk through it until we can do the gross motor skills well, and then we'll do what we call a slow live run, where we actually put all the gear on, do everything, but we don't let them make a mistake while they do it. Well, we applied that to the TIM part of it also. And what we found is we started a hands-on two-lane scenario that was easier to expand because we have way more two-lane than we do interstate or four-lane highways, that we could easily expand out to how to deal with a four-lane road. And by walking them through this basic one and then understanding how they could expand it, we got some really, really good feedback. We probably took us 6 months to get this thing perfected. Part of it was we developed a minimum equipment list. We were shocked at how many agencies, didn't matter whether it was fire, law, EMS in particular. TOW usually is fairly well equipped. Obviously DOT is very well equipped. We're ill-equipped to handle the proper amount of notification and cones, and departments that didn't even have signs for flaggers. We were just like, what? How do you not have a stop slow sign? That kind of seems, if you only have two-lane highway, that would be a critical piece of equipment for me. I realize we have hands, but it makes it a lot easier, especially at night, some things. So each one of the trainers, we have a pickup truck that's assigned to us. We carry a ton of equipment with us. And we bring everything that would be needed to set up a basic traffic zone so that they can see what it looks like. And then we've combed every Tuesday. We put out a weekly email distribution list from the fire school, and on certain days there's certain things that are added at the end. On Tuesdays we list every grant that we know that's available locally, regionally, and nationally, and then along with any training things that are coming up that are outside of the ordinary. We pretty much have our program now. When we do this training, we still strongly encourage and usually have representation from fire, EMS, law, and towing is pretty good. DOT here does an excellent job of getting all their people through it at their locations. We've done some work with them, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so this time of year is actually when we start slowing down on our TIM. A lot of that has to do with the fact of we want them to drive through their scene when it's dark. We're not going to tell you what's wrong. We want you to see it. So, our program allows us to adopt, but if we can get it so that after they've done 4 to 6 evolutions, okay, now let's get in our vehicles, let's drive through your traffic zone, because we'll be on an obscure piece of road that we can take ownership of that still may have some traffic, but we can control that, and then let them see what does my normal traffic zone look like with the lighting that I have on my vehicles, and what should we look at adding or reducing to that situation. And that sets a very big imprint on them. We've gotten to the point where many of our law enforcement agencies understand that once fire, or if fire already is on scene, that squad car that's parked right up there between the fire truck and the incident, if it's not a vehicle fire, doesn't need to have any warning lights on. Nobody can see them till they're there, and at night in particular, all it does is make our scene more difficult to work in, because police and fire seem to have this competition to see who can have the most LED lights on their vehicle as they're parked and going. A lot of things we do, we hand out a 3x5 card. Each card is a different color, so it makes it easier for them to keep track of. And so every participant gets a copy of this card, and it's two-sided. The thing on drive intentionally really came to focus because between 2020, the winter of 2020 and 2021, we had 7 incidents where the responding fire apparatus actually caused a crash or were involved in a crash prior to arriving on scene. Kind of defeats the purpose for what we're going to do, so we talk about how to do that. Connect. With the connect part, one of the things we know is we have a frequency. It's one of the national frequencies. We call it gold. We use a lot of colors here. And gold is a statewide mutual aid frequency that is allowed to be used by almost any agency. So TOW can use it. MHP, all of them have it. MHP is actually required to monitor it, our highway patrol system. But police, fire, EMS, school buses, DOT, we all have it. And so by talking about running our incidents on gold, now when a tow operator is showing up on scene, they can radio into command, ask where they want them to be. And there's been multiple times now in the small rural settings where when they've arrived, we weren't ready for them. but we asked them, we didn't get our sign on the other end of the incident because we were just short on personnel. So having them go to the other side of the two-lane incident, put their sign out, and then find a field entrance, something to park and stage, just maybe with some lights activated to provide some of that advanced warning, fills that niche while we're going through. So we work better together. And then we talk about the rest, which is self-explanatory. We tried to look at this placing so that at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can look at this or I can regurgitate this without having to think too much. So we don't talk so much about feet as we do steps. I can remember 10 steps. I can remember 20 steps, 30. So if I need to make it bigger, I just got to make it bigger by the number of steps. And we did steps because when we talked about stride and stuff, it just got confusing. And it's close enough. I told them, you're not going to see me coming out and taking a measuring wheel unless there's an incident coming out. So on the back side is kind of a diagram, and it's a both interstate and two-lane. We're looking at probably changing that to a two-lane specific and a four-lane specific to do. We felt we didn't want to have too many cars, but we think this is a little too convoluted. And in the bottom corner, you'll notice it says not to scale. And obviously, you can't show the downstream end of it because it's a 3x5 card. But it gives them an idea of how this works and the why. And this is all based on what we talk about. This scene is based on a mile of clear, straight road, clear visibility, roads are dry, everything is perfect. Any of that changes, you make it bigger, period. Nighttime, you make it bigger because I got to give my drivers more time to react. But they have a template to start with to make bigger. So we have found it to be extremely effective in getting the message out, giving these cards out, having everybody understand what their role is, where their role is, where we would like them to park. We do have a note in there about leaving in a PDF. So there'll be available a 20-page PDF training material that we leave with each agency so that they can regurgitate this to their new members or whatever they need as they go. One of our TIM champions, Terry Morrison, which was he was part of the initial group that started it, designed this sign. It's got Velcro on either side for the arrows. And especially in the daytime, this sign is a force multiplier and an extremely, extremely effective deal on a 4-lane road. And so Bozeman is probably one of our busiest areas in the state and rapidly growing, so traffic is becoming a huge nightmare. And you want to know how effective it is? This is a picture he took. You can see the skid marks in the bottom left corner. The crash is just past the bridge. That sign is a mile down the road, and that little speck you see in the passing lane is a lone state trooper. And there's not a cone on the road, but we have compliance. We told them what we wanted them to do. They figured it out. They do it. So this sign is an unbelievable force multiplier for us on our 4-lane highways. Tragedy struck right after I took over the program in 2020. These two gentlemen, Nick Visser on the left as you're looking at it, and Casey Allen on the right, who I had worked with 4 days prior to that out on a highway incident, were struck and killed. And so with that, the opportunity came for us to go to our legislative session. Fortunately, the session was shortly after this happened, and we were able to enhance our law. There were some issues. We're going to do a little correction this next one, but one of the things talks about is a reasonable, lower, and safe speed. That can actually be picked up on a video camera instead of having to have a radar gun to know if they were going too fast or not. It did give us the permission to set up temporary speed zones, which we spent a lot of time talking with DOT. What if the fire department's going to set up a temporary speed zone? What kind of signs do we need? What do we need to do? So, but not everybody's doing that because that's manpower and cost difficult. Big talk about penalties. Montana is not a huge fine state for traffic penalties. And if we're honest with ourselves, 30% of our drivers don't have a valid license anyway. So we went with our deal here, and imprisonment of not more than 90 days, $100 to $500 fine, first conviction. Second conviction is most important. you cannot waive the 10 days in jail. You do go to jail. Judges cannot suspend it. Then obviously $500 to $1,000. The death one, we feel are going to use a different deal, but it's there. The important thing is a violation is reckless endangerment. Reckless endangerment is critical because that actually is the same as a DUI in the eyes of your insurance. It's also a serious traffic violation. So those of you who have a CDL know that that's not a good ticket to get. So those two things have really gone and made it a stronger law, and we're working on the public education portion to go from there. Is what we're doing working? Well, last year marked the first time we didn't have a fatality in any division anywhere across since 2014. We don't have a lot out here, thank God. We're fairly, rural state, but we have a ton of traffic, so it surprises me. We did finally get a hands-on portion in our law enforcement academy. So we go up there with an instructor from the fire school, we have a trooper instructor, and we go to their training track, and we bring in fire departments, an ambulance, tow companies, and we can set it up so they understand TIM as it relates to when fire's there, which is 2 events, a crash, well, 3, crash, hazmat, or a fire. And then we also work with them on how they can be safer when they're out there as a single traffic unit or maybe a double. We really, thanks to the DOT inviting us in, we've done a lot of work with MDT in looking at their programs, talking about how they can do things and just some things they can do to make life simpler. I spent 3 years building roads. I get that. We've gone to the tow company, to the tow conferences, and presented TIM there and talked to the tow operators. I can't stress how important it is to be able to do this at night so that they can understand they got a work area, but when they light up that big 60-inch LED light bar so they can see their work area aiming to the back, who can see what's going on as they approach the scene? The fire service, we've gone to a lot of those rechargeable battery lights that come with their own stands and stuff, and we put light focused where we want it. And so we talk to them about that. And then a D-driver presentation. I started doing that myself 6 years ago, at our local high school, and now I've expanded it into sort of a statewide program. Basically talks about the move over law, the D-drivers, and then I talk about airbags and seatbelt safety, showing some pretty graphic pictures and videos. I mean, not obscene, but enough to get their attention, especially like feet on the dash. And then I go through 3 incidents that have happened in my career. And the last one, I can talk about it all day long till I see that first picture. But basically, 3 teenagers were killed because of a teen drunk. 1 died in my arms. He had been dating my daughter for 2.5 years. I knew that guy, So we've had good success with that. Where are we going? I see we're actually, somebody corrected it because we're at 64.9%. Our steering committee wants 70% by the end. We're looking at another Train the Trainer this fall, and probably what's most amazing is how our interagencies, all the disciplines, how they're working together. How I get buy-in, aside from the post hours from the law enforcement, is the fact that the only other class I've ever sat in that had law, fire, EMS, all those together is active shooter. So being able to understand everybody's roles and go through. But what really works for us is being able to make those connections, especially in a non-urgent situation, understanding how we can communicate, understanding where we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to do, and how. I guess the last piece, I have a couple minutes, is Move Over Montana. Move Over Montana will be 8 years old July 8th. It's a Facebook page that is now a nonprofit. It started by a trooper's wife after he got hit. Amazingly enough, almost 5 years to the date, he got hit again. We decided to form a nonprofit for 3 purposes, or 2 main purposes: education, public education, education to responders, and then we want to provide funding. So funding for departments that need equipment, and then the last goal is funding for families that have been affected by a struck by. One of our major goals for the end of this year is to get billboards up at the interstate entrances to each of our state, which is a lot easier for us than most because we only have one coming in from each side. One will show what the law is. The second is going to show the penalties. We feel that public education piece of understanding the ramifications of not slowing down is going to sink in and hopefully get better compliance. So, in a nutshell, we have been really working hard with all of these agencies. We understand that we've got to get out and do it. The PowerPoints are great. I was a strong, avid believer, but we're seeing a much better takeaway from the hands-on portion. And then the last thing is at the end of each, we send to their training officer, their chiefs, or whoever their heads of their association, the links to the responder safety webinars and webs, and tell them to get out there, do those classes, make them a requirement for you to have to do X number of hours or whatever sessions you want them to do for your department, so that they understand how it goes. I mean, that page is phenomenal, and I know a number of places. And again, we have a volunteer retirement program, requires hours. This is a way for them to mandate these hours and obtain them at their pace and go. So we've been tying all the pictures we can together and trying to make sure everybody gets this out there. If you have questions, if you're looking for things, get a hold of me. That's my state phone number and my state email. Our towing association here, I see Joanne Blyton just answered somebody's question about where they are. You can get a hold of Joanne Blyton because our tow association does it. And then we've had a number of other just fire equipment services that are locally based in Montana that have copied the sign. I think Terry made a mistake by not patenting that bad boy and making it and putting it out there. For $350, $400, it's a pretty darn good deal. We have to go with the signs that have the springs in them and stuff because we have this thing called wind, and it doesn't stop here very often. And so if you don't have those signs and some sandbags, you'll get your sign all right, just somewhere a mile or two down the road. That's our goal. That's our program in a nutshell. I was very happy to work with the rural TIM program. I think they developed an outstanding program that'll be helpful to those of us that don't have people.
Hey, thanks, Jerry.
We still have counties that have miles of interstate with no cell service. You're welcome.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. There's just so many great takeaways from that. Great presentation, and great presentation from all three speakers. But for Montana, I just wanted to that Velcro sign. We did a little bit of research on the move over law out there, and they're seeing just anecdotally now, they're seeing a very high percentage of moving over just by slapping that Velcro arrow on there compared to other situations where the state police out there are seeing maybe 50%, estimated, again, anecdotally, observation. They're seeing about 50% move over with the signs. The towers are saying they're seeing 90% or above compliance with the move over. So could it be that we just need a simple arrow? The other thing is the move over law. Those are the toughest laws in the country, I think. Jail time. So if anyone knows of any other state that has jail time associated with the move over laws, we would love to hear it. But and the other big takeaway that work you're doing, Jerry, is just phenomenal. But that the D-driver presentations you're doing in schools, man, that is heroes work. So because I think that's the problem, right? When we're seeing these increased fatalities and responder struck bys, is this whole distracted thing. And I won't even get going on what I observe on the highway, and I've been on the road a lot lately, and what I've been observing, people looking at their phones going 95 on the high-speed lane. So anyways, thanks to everyone. We're 4 minutes over. Sorry we don't have time for questions. If we missed a question that you need answered, all the speakers are more than happy to answer for you, or Jim, Joe, and I. Thanks again. Great presentations by all three. I think this was a great talking, Tim. see you next month on the fourth Wednesday at 1:30 in July. Thank you.